Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our final day of the TMCC AI Summit. My name is Natalie Russell. I'm the Dean of Liberal Arts here at TMCC, and we're so glad that you're here, whether you're in person, the few of us, and most of you online joining us via Zoom. This session is being live streamed and recorded. It will run for an hour, and we'll try to save a few minutes at the end for Q&A. Housekeeping item for those on Zoom, if you're joining us there, please keep yourselves muted. If you have questions for the presenter, go ahead and put them right in the chat, and we'll make sure to ask them at the end. And we appreciate all of you, our participants, who are here to learn and discuss. We know that AI in academic contexts can be unsettling, complex, and exciting. So we thank all of you for your curiosity and your willingness to be here, for your open minds, and this opportunity to dialogue together. We are fortunate to work here at TMCC in this innovative and open academic community. Now, it is my pleasure to reintroduce today's speaker for his last of 3 presentations, Reed Dickson from Pima Community College. Reed Dickson is an educator, writer, and designer who often speaks on AI and the future of teaching, learning, and technology. He has led hundreds of talks and workshops for college faculty, K-12 teachers, instructional designers, administrators, and ed tech leaders. Reed has offered a broad range of courses and seminars in faculty development and teacher education, ranging from AI for teaching and learning, educational technology, inclusive design, to student-centered learning. While currently directing faculty and academic leader support at Pima Community College, Reed also directed a K-12 teacher education program at Teachers College, Columbia University. When not teaching or designing learning experiences for faculty and leaders, Reed advises ed tech and ed serving companies, as well as colleges and K-12 school districts through Next for Ed Consulting. Reed also currently serves as AAC&U faculty for their Institute on AI, Pedagogy, and Curriculum. He is a prolific writer on education and technology and hosts a Substack blog called Curious Tendril. I also learned yesterday that he is a writing instructor, which I know my colleagues in English departments across the system will appreciate. Learn more about Reed at reeddickson.com. And with that, I'll hand things over to Reed as he shares his thoughts on the AI resilient educator moving from reactive to proactive practices.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be with you all today. I think we have a large audience remotely. We also have folks in the room. So for folks in the room, if you have a device of any kind to work with, please take it out. That could be your phone, ideally a laptop. For folks that are outside, we're going to be diving in and we'll do a little bit of interactive stuff where you're going to be expected to use AI and think about AI in the context of this presentation, which is actually more of a workshop. Let's go ahead and dive in, and I'm going to share slides as we start. So here goes nothing. So our topic is the AI resilient educator, moving from reactive to proactive practices. What do I mean by proactive practices? Everything is moving quickly, and we know that adoption and use of these tools is kind of overwhelming right now in positive and negative ways. How do we engage with this moment in ways that acknowledge that there is an unprecedented ramp of innovation happening in which it's becoming ubiquitous? AI is virtually on all of our devices, it's on our phones. Let's go ahead and dive in, and we're going to think about this from a pedagogical perspective. Before diving in, I want to say a thank you as we start to Dr. Jeffrey Alexander, TMCC President. Thank you again for bringing me out for these talks. And also to Mike, our Vice President here at TMCC, and Cheryl, our Chief Technology Officer, as well as Austin, who is the new Chief Technology Officer here. And then Fred, of course, who's a professor of political science, and Gina, who makes all of the logistics possible. So let's go ahead and dive in. There's more people to thank than I can even remember, but just wanted to at least put some names out to start. Again, for today's workshop, our scope is looking at this question. Globally, not just in the US, educators are pivoting from last year, which was really crisis-driven engagement with AI, to how we can be proactive. What proactive strategies can anticipate increased AI use, which we're already seeing K-12 and college, but we're also seeing it not just in the classroom, but in the workplace. We'll talk a little bit about that as we get started. According to a digital education survey, just for context, 86% of college students already know that they use AI in their studies. What does that mean for us? It's pretty sobering. There's good and there's bad. It's technology, it'll have positive and negative uses, but that's what we're looking at in terms of data. And some studies show higher or lower numbers. I have a piece at Curious Tendril on my website, blog, whatever you want to call it. And at that newsletter, it does show all of the statistics that are emerging in terms of student use of AI at the K-12 and the college level. So for me, this is an opportunity. Every crisis is an opportunity. This is a teachable moment. And we can be defensively reactive. I understand that because it is disorienting. It's changing potentially the way that we teach, the way we love to teach. But it's also an opportunity to help folks before they move into the workforce in learning how to use these tools in transparent and ethical ways, in thinking about, okay, well, what is appropriate, effective use of these tools? When, where, and how, and when not to. So again, this is moving faster than we can keep up. It's really hard to pay attention to all the news when every week there's something new. In some of the other sessions that I offered, I shared some of the new tools available for video creation. And that's just looking at Sora. We didn't even look at Notebook LM's new video tools or a suite of various Google tools that are available for video. It's hard to stay up to date. It's hard to be an expert. What do we do? Perhaps it's impossible for us to call ourselves AI experts, and yet we're experts at facilitating learning. We're experts at getting students to think about and dig deeper into their learning, to support that process and to document that process, to show their cognitive work, to show their learning friction. This is an imperative on us that we actually engage them more in the process than we ever have before, because the product can be hacked. And if someone is really savvy with AI, they will find ways to hack final products and final projects and do magnificent work, really impressive work, the kind of work that they'll be expected to do in the workplace. But how do we know what they're doing unless we're seeing their cognitive work and their process? So looking at ethics, number one, when and how do we use the tool? What are the problematics of the tool? There is a long list of ethical concerns about AI. One of those is the question of digital sovereignty. Should students have the choice, or should they be required to use AI in an assignment? There are professors who say, I'm going to require this. Others who say, I'm going to require that they don't use it. But it comes back to this question of students' choice and maybe instructors' choice as well. It's a messy, interesting time. But we're looking at ethical issues, and there's many. One of my pieces in Curious Tendril goes through 25 different ethical concerns right now that are very real and need to be listened to, connected with AI. Transparency is sort of a workplace practice, and we'll give some examples as we dive into the news, that shows employees are both hiding their use surreptitiously on the job, and they're pretending to use it when they're not because their employer requires that they use it. It's a very strange moment. Going to metacognitive practice, something we've been doing all along, or at least some of us have, getting folks to pull back and think about thinking. How are we supporting our students in their reflective process? What tools did we use? How did we learn? What worked for us? What did not? Pulling back and even evaluating the tools that we're using, comparing the tools that we're using, is something that we can add as an addendum to any assignment to say, okay, well, pull back, explain your process. How much time did you spend on this? It's sort of a learning labor log. We'll dig into those kind of things as we proceed. And as we proceed, I want you to be on your computers, logged into ChatGPT or Anthropic or Google or Mistral or LM Arena, which allows you to put in a query and then it responds with 2 different bots at the same time so you can compare the results. Please be, if you have a second monitor, logged in on that second monitor. If you don't, just bear with us and we'll unshare the screen and we'll dive into some demo time and looking closely at what we can do with AI to sort of solve the riddle of how do we reshape and rethink curriculum in a time of AI that reflects your beliefs, whatever your beliefs happen to be as it relates to AI for teaching and learning. So I'm a big believer in andragogy. like the idea of treating our students as adults, as experts. Every student, even at the K-12 level, needs agency, needs to feel like they have some, you know, what's it called? Self-directed learning opportunities. At the college level especially, we need to be hyper-relevant. We need to make sure that we're creating spaces for students to step into a role that is their future, to feel like they are experts even when we might not be at the thing that they're doing the research on, at the tool that they're using, including AI. So one of those questions is, as we do curricular reform, with every activity, how might you be able to create a space for your students to become an expert in things you may not be an expert about, specifically as it relates to AI? Interesting question, and we'll just hold on to that. So that's the full description. The broader question, again, is how do we advance what I'm calling AI resilient education, which means, yeah, maybe we can't design an assignment that can't be hacked by AI, but we can design assignments that are less susceptible to misuse and more aligned with positive use and any range between those two. So let's go ahead and dive in. I want to begin by reviewing our talk last year. Since the last time I saw you, had 4 eye surgeries. I'm not fully recovered, but it looks like I'm on the path. And I won't have to see the doctor again for the next 3 months, which makes me very happy. So last time we were here, we did a teacher side demo where I walked you through many ways to create course activities. That includes rubrics, it includes module introductions, it includes teaching philosophy statements or personal assessment statements. It included reshaping discussions. We talked about a lot of different things that we can do within your LMS or outside of your LMS to rethink and re-energize what you're doing in ways that might pivot a little bit from what was familiar to what might be more engaging for our students. We're going to dig into that more deeply and have some time for that today. Last time we were here, we logged into ChatGPT 3.5. Now, ChatGPT 5 is the standard. And it includes advanced reasoning mode. It dives into thinking if you ask a sophisticated question that has multiple stages within it. For those of you who have the Plus version, you can do even more advanced things and have extended thinking and create bots that'll structure your activity. So you have to do something over and over again, it'll support a recurring activity. Again, we did build curriculum and share. We're going to do that again today a little bit, but the main focus is to plant the seed and help us start to think, what do we do this year as it relates to the state of AI? Same process as before. You're going to be sharing a transcript link from what you create inside our shared document. We'd like each of you who are attending remotely or in person to create one thing that you're sharing forward. It could just be a Microsoft or Google Doc link where you've cut and pasted all your work. And again, if you're teaching coding and you're using Replit or AI-generated code tools that they're expected to use as coding professionals, there may not be an easy way to share that content. Even within Anthropic, there's no simple way to share what is the question that the student is asking, what is the response, what is the question, what is the response. The whole thread of integrated reading and writing often gets lost in many tools. But there's always Google Docs where you can paste in a screenshot. So we want you to, whatever your process is, whatever tool you're using, to share a link. This is an example from what used to be called Bard. Now it's called Gemini. These tools will evolve in terms of their names, but it's the same process. You also have a transcript sharing process in ChatGPT where you'll see, it looks like an inbox with an arrow facing upward. On your phone, you may have to first look for the kebab icon and click on it and then choose to share, or you'll look for something like this. They keep moving it around, so just keep that in mind. But transcript sharing allows your peers to see, okay, what was the whole thread? If you got a response, did you challenge the response? Did you ask a deeper, harder question? Are you supporting, and this is similar with your own students, are they demonstrating that they're asking difficult questions? We want them Socratically to be challenging the outputs, not just to accept anything at face value. So this allows us to capture their cognitive work, their extended discussion, their integrated reading and writing process. We'll do that with each other as well, just for sort of TILT, which is transparency in learning and teaching, where we're sharing our process with our peers and saying, this is what we tried. It may not be perfect, but this is what we tried today. So in this space that you're logged into inside our Google document, expect to jump in there and share some resources. And again, to make sure that we all have access to the same document, I'll put it into the chat feed. I'm copying these Google Docs. If you use Google Docs, Process-wise, you click on the share button. You make sure that folks are editors or they're added specifically to the document. You copy that link, and then you send it out. We've already got people who have been writing in their names, their information, and if they want to be in my newsletter, I say, please let me know. And if you do, I'll add you. If you don't, then I won't. Going back to our shared slides, I'm going to stop the share just so I can put it in the chat feed. Here goes nothing. There's the chat feed. This is the link to the document. For those of you who are in the room, if there's more people that join, please re-add it to the chat feed, because unfortunately that gets lost for folks that are coming in late. Going back to my share screen and back to the full screen presentation. Hang on for a moment. Now we are back into the slides. So I was reviewing last year's talk. Two things I want to point is it's still the same process. Transcript sharing works somewhat well. It's not perfect. So I should note that in ChatGPT, you might decide to have students, when you're asking them to share their cognitive work in the transcript, share a link, but you might also say, I want a link plus I want a full copy of your discussion. In case the link ever got corrupted or the link is missing a letter, it's all ruined and you don't get to see what the student actually wrote because there's a small error with the link. So that's something to keep in mind beyond just link sharing. Moving into yesterday's talk as a recap, for those of you who didn't make it, this will be a whirlwind tour of yesterday's keynote, looking at authenticity of the age of AI and why authenticity matters now more than ever, why humanness matters more than ever, and why AI arguably is kind of like, you know, when our body tells us, okay, we need to start exercising more, we need to go see the doctor. Arguably, AI is kind of like that. It's showing some of the cracks and the crevices of higher education, some things we have been doing that maybe haven't been as human or as authentic as we could be. We'll dig into this and look at that more closely. But for me, this is a call to return to authentic practices, and we're going to dive in and look at that. So as a visual, I was doing a talk in Detroit last year in which this happened. I saw blue lightning. I didn't know how to explain it to my doctor, my wife, my friends. I asked ChatGPT at the time, please create an image with lightning coming through. And then I used this to talk to my doctor to explain what symptoms I saw as well. The big splotches that appeared on my eye, the partial curtain that started moving in from the inside of my eye, which meant that that part of my eye is no longer a field area. I can't use it on the inside of my eye. But this was just beginning as I was driving south to Indianapolis. And after surgery, I had no one to talk to. And I was kind of stuck in the dark in bed for a long time. So I pulled out my phone, pressed the audio button, and talked to my bot, and it talked back. And so I would say, look, I've got small blue flourishes, 3:28 in the morning on Saturday, the date, and it would keep a full log of all my health symptoms. So I know what changed. And I didn't have to write anything down. I would explain the pain, I would explain the progress, and it had great bedside manners. Doctors are critical and vital, but they don't always have to have the best bedside manners. And I leaned on this tool to give me some encouragement and some support. And it gave me that. This is the image it created, explain what, at a certain point I had these little scratches. This is exactly what it looked like for my right eye at the time. How do you explain the invisible to your doctor? It's a very useful tool for that. How do you explain the way your pain hurts to somebody without having to say too many words? This is what my pain felt like on a certain day. And for those of you who can't see the screen, I should just narrate for UDL principles. It's an image generated with ChatGPT that superimposes a fist on the face at the head level. So you can tell that it's sort of like pain management as a brain and a fist. Next image is an image of someone putting an eye drop in, and it says brow ache and second prescription, explaining that this isn't a headache, it's a brow ache that I get whenever I'm closing one eye, when I'm wearing a patch, etc. And if I'm not using my drops, this happens almost immediately. So just being able to explain ourselves was very helpful. When I had a bubble over my eye, this was week 3, what it looked like from the right eye. Then this was on October 28th later, how that bubble changed shape as the time processed. Whenever I closed my left eye, this is what I would see in the right. This is what I would see, later the blur persisted, but the bubble was still in the center. This was how I felt day to day. One day I was progress, the next day I was regressing. And this is the point of yesterday's talk, which was that sometimes medical care begins to feel like an assembly line, where you go into the doctor's office and you get moved around from station to station and table to table. And I had one experience on one day where I was like, this is so similar to the worst case experience of some of our students in higher education. And as I drove home, I pressed record on Otter, and Otter's an audio recording app, and I just journaled. I write now with audio a lot. I'm a writer, I write with audio, and I will use that. So anyway, I journaled with Otter, and I wrote an essay that was kind of like this, looking at this piece. I wrote at least a journal entry. But I jumped it towards the question of how is the college a little bit like an assembly line, where we just have these processes and we move students along in a conveyor belt. We don't always have the human touch. We don't always have the equivalent, the educational equivalent of bedside manner. So these are some sort of images of like flow charts or the default using experience where we give examiner paper, final exam, and you're done, as a process that involves product, rather than process. So the core questions I asked yesterday, if you want to revisit the talk, please do. It's how do we reclaim our humanness at this time in the age of AI? How do we move from this transactional experience, where we're being moved along, to something that's truly transformational, which for me, college was, well, it was a self-actualization moment. It provided a space for that. Ideally, college for me, that's part of the curriculum. What technologies can support is another question we're going to dig into today, specifically, looking at types of things you can do as you reshape your curriculum to make sure that students are digging deeper rather than going more shallow with AI. Both are possible right now. So, framing pedagogical questions amidst the time of rapid AI development are these. How do we move from passive to active? And again, when I say passive, I mean passive everything. So we've got passive readings. So do the readings, but we don't ask students to share their notes in general, whether it's online or not. It's actually very difficult without the right technology to take notes in the margins of a digital text. We have tools that can do that, but as teachers, do we actually ask to see the notes in the margins of the reading? I used to do this as a 9th grade English teacher, but at the college level, we don't ask for that. We don't ask evidence for, are you doing active reading that is immersive? Are you doing text-dependent inquiry where you're highlighting things, posing questions in the margin, finding your favorite quotes so that you can use them in the essay that you end up writing? We don't, at the college level, always follow through with process, which means looking at the pre-writing notes and seeing how those notes build into an outline, how those outlines build into a first draft, etc. We can still hold on to those process pieces, even in this age of AI, but the question is, how do we do that? How do we get students to still continue to document their process the whole way through? Because if they only give us the final product, who wrote it? It's a dilemma. It's an honest dilemma. And now it's a chance to return to process and to return to that sort of immersive thinking about how do we support students at every step of the way. It's a different kind of teaching. And you might think it takes more work. We'll talk about that in a bit. It does take work, but there's tools to support that as well. So another core question is from the detached student to the connected student. We're always thinking about, okay, well, how does the student feel personally connected with what they're learning? Text to self connections, text to course connections, self to text, self to course, and self to instructor. How does the student feel that bridge in our teaching? A lot of times, especially in larger classrooms, students begin to feel like a number. So this is a core question that I want you to hold on to as you're looking back at your current courses, because we're going to dive in and you're going to take a moment, you're going to pull out a curricular activity and think, okay, well, how can I make my student feel more connected? How can I make, and these are a series of questions, how can I make this more active? We talked about text, but even videos. We sometimes assign videos, but we don't actually ask them to take notes during the video. We don't ask them to engage during the video. There's no interactives. We just basically say, like old school teaching, which I also used to do, bring in the cart with a VCR, press play. And then maybe there's some time afterwards for discussion. But are we doing the equivalent of pre-reading, mid-reading, and post-reading discussions with our videos? Are there ways to do that with technologies that we have? Yes, all of those are true. But if we don't, then it's just passive. We're expecting them to be taught at rather than to be taught with. We're not co-constructing with them at all. If you like Mikhail Bakhtin, for those of you who are English teachers, Bakhtin talks about the idea of talking to the text. We have conversations with whatever we're reading. We talk with the author. We have a dialogue. That's part of what a good reading, immersive reading looks like, is we're deeply getting into that. That can happen with video. It can happen with podcasts as well. Ideally, it's social. And so we'll talk about this in a little bit, but if you Google social annotation, the products that have emerged right now support the equivalent of 5 students at a round table sharing their notes with each other on a map. And they've all got this beautiful map, and somebody makes a comment about this part, or maybe it's an engineering design process, and they choose this specific part of the diagram, and they discuss, okay, well, what variables are you optimizing for in this equation? What are you deciding not to focus on? How can we improve the design, or how can we analyze the way the map is misrepresenting the data? Those can all be comments in the margins now using digital technologies, even if we're not in the face-to-face classroom. And that's another dilemma we're not talking about. It's not just an AI thing. A lot of us are suddenly teaching online. Post-COVID, we're still teaching online. And it's a new thing to think, okay, well, how can I do the equivalent in a face-to-face or an online classroom? I want my students to do visual thinking with a whiteboard. How do I do that while keeping it accessible? These are new kinds of messy questions that we have to engage with. But there are technologies that can support that. They can also make it less likely for students to be tempted to misuse AI. They'd rather have fun doing it in a real way than go to the arduous process of using AI to fake each micro step within a learning experience. So that's what we're going to dig into, and I want you to hold on to as we're talking. So framing pedagogical questions, again, moving from passive to active. If nothing else, hold on to that. What are you doing in your class that's passive? How might you make it active? And they're demonstrating their process the whole way along. Again, process, not product, even at the point of reading, before we get to writing or analysis. From detached to connected, I would argue that a lot of students feel detached. We want them to have personal relationships with the college that they're attending. We want them to re-enroll every course that they start. And how do we build that sense of connection between their peers, even in an online class, especially in a time of AI, where they might feel like, oh, I could just do this on my own. There are students who say, I don't need college anymore. That's disturbing. For me, we're competing with a new kind of educational force that can be supportive of our work, but it can also seem like it's pushing against it. I hold space for that. That's a difficult question. But the broader thing is, what do we bring to the table that an AI bot does not? How do we help the student, number one, feel connected? Other questions I have, that we're putting them first. We're not putting ourselves first. It's not teacher first. It's not students last. Just to read the slide, it says from students last to students first. Sometimes our thinking about curriculum has been really so obsessed with, course learning outcome alignment and the cult of rubrics that we don't slow down and think, well, what do the students want? What does student growth look like? And how can students co-construct meaning in this course so that they feel center in the experience? Another question to look at is just this core piece of moving from product to process. Product will always be important, but product can be hacked. Last time we were here, we talked about auditing our classes. I sometimes call this red teaming your class, which means, okay, pretend you're a student and do something awful. Pretend that you are a non-traditional student who is working full time and they've got 3 kids and they've got a deadline tomorrow and they can either drop out or ask for an extension or use AI to just fake it at the last minute. Pretend that you're that student who needs to fake it at the last minute and plug in that assignment and see what output will come in your courses. I would strongly recommend doing that rather than stepping into this sort of default role that we're not good at, which is becoming policemen. We're good educators. But if we move our role into this policing of learning and we don't change anything about our curricular process, then we're going to have to be playing the role of interrogator, which I don't think we should be, but all the same, there's ways to have educational discussions when students misuse AI, but the concern is the gaze that we have upon the classroom becomes more of a policing gaze and less of a pedagogical gaze. We want to think, okay, well, with these students that we're working with, can I change my curriculum first so that there's less likelihood that students at the last minute might be tempted to misuse AI, to skip learning, to do cognitive offloading, to pretend to learn when they're not? What can I do inside my classroom to have them show their process all the way through, maybe in a way that's social, maybe in a way that's not, but in a way that actually demonstrates, oh, they did the work. And maybe there's even a video reflection as they're going through it where they're explaining their work. Think again, long term, this technology is moving fast. But what are the ways we can have students document and reflect on their process the whole way through? Within an existing assignment, you don't have to rewrite the whole assignment. Just think about chunking it into smaller pieces, which is an element of online learning that we know matters. And metacognitive practice, things we already know, but maybe we're not doing as much because we haven't had to until now. Then again, status quo teaching, we all taught the way we've been taught. And I've had many teachers who have said, okay, here's the readings. I'm going to lecture and inspire you when you come to class, and you'll have to take 3 exams and you're done, or 3 papers. And they've done that because they're familiar. We often teach because we know that's the way we've been taught, or we enjoy it. We've kind of settled into a groove, and we're like, okay, I can do this. I know how to engage the physical classroom or the online classroom. And now we suddenly have to pivot again to think, well, how can we engage in a way that navigates or builds upon AI? What does innovation look like in this context? Another thing is to think about it, just this phrase of moving from the formulaic to the personalized. We can be personalized. We can differentiate our instruction to meet the needs of the room. We can think about funds of knowledge pedagogy. Louise Moll, who recently passed away, talks about learning about your students' cultural funds of knowledge and then trying to connect with that and create assignments that build upon that as an asset. That's not formulaic or mechanistic teaching. That's thinking, okay, well, how do we adjust our teaching for our specific students so that they can engage with this? And we can even use AI to support that process in reshaping the metaphors we're using and reshaping even the readings themselves to be more sort of culturally relevant as we dive into teaching those specific students who might be getting ready for a specific job. And we do college and career readiness, where we really connect that reading to their next step in their career while hitting the same points. These are new things to be thinking about, or to be thinking about coaching our students on how they can reshape what they're reading into a way that they connect with from the beginning, even if it's jargon rich, so that they can navigate the language of power. This is another phrase I've been saying. All of our classrooms are either gatekeeping or gate opening institutions, our colleges as well. Language itself builds walls around itself. It is jargon heavy. When my doctor says and whispers to the nurse, his IOP is 48. This is not good. I'm like, what's an IOP? And then when it's IOP is at 3, I'm like, what does that mean? I don't know what that means. And it was both in my journey. When folks talk about field of vision view, and I'm here as a patient listening, it's just like when teachers are hearing folks talk about Michel Foucault and the, what's it called? The panopticon, there we go, which is very relevant in the time of AI. I was thinking of the genealogy of power and how do we unpack the origin of anything. We use a lot of buzzwords in every industry, whether it's accounting, whether it's engineering, whether it's English. We build, and I think they're beautiful words sometimes, but they can be very alienating, just like our doctors and their discourses can be very alienating. Our lawyers, our accountants, even the forms we filled out when we do our taxes can be alienating. And maybe there's ways we can coach our students to say, okay, well, we're navigating a lot of heavy jargon that's exclusive. Let's use AI to explain it to me like I'm 12, or use a metaphor to help me give access to this material. I still need to take notes on it, but I want you to explain it to me in a different way, or even using a different language, using my home language. These are new concepts to think about in terms of, okay, well, how can we give students a window into sometimes language that is by nature exclusive? So going back to this idea of personalized responsive, we can think about how we change our own curricular practices, or also how we engage students in self-personalizing. In other words, I've got something I don't know how to handle. What can I use to navigate it? My daughter said to me, like, that was about 2 months ago. She's like, Daddy, I want to get Study Fetch. And I was like, how do you know about Study Fetch? And she's like, it was on TikTok. I was like, okay. I knew about Study Fetch because I'd had a long conversation with the people that run Study Fetch at ASU JSV. And it's a company that is designed that the students, markets to students, it doesn't market to schools. To say, okay, well, we can create flashcards for you, we can create study guides for you, whatever you're reading, we can create the tools that will help you prepare for your next exam. Those are the wraparound kind of resources that textbooks started moving towards. But now students can create them themselves using something like StudyFetch that gives her, okay, the way she likes to study, it's going to meet her where she's at and create content for her to prepare for a exam that she has to take. And she's taking college classes now as well as high school senior classes. She's using it for both. Interesting times. And we don't always even have access to that knowledge as teachers. We don't know what they're using to study. Do we create a space, incidentally, and I don't have slides on this, for students to share, hey, this is something I tried using AI to help me learn. What are your thoughts? I know that sounds weird, but what if there's a place to be hyper vulnerable and real with, this is how I'm using this tool to help me learn better. And we are the people that support them. We are the human in the loop, the pedagogical loop that was always a human loop, that helps sort of guide effective use of these tools. And we can also learn from our students, okay, what are they doing right now? So there are instructors across the country that will have a module or a hidden, like a discussion that's bonus points only, where students share anything that they would like to relating to their use of AI within a specific assignment. And some courses say, well, no AI for this assignment, but you can use AI for that assignment. And they mix it up. And they say, well, in the real world, you're going to have both. You're going to have employers who expect you to use AI. You're going to have employers who expect you not to. And that might be in the same job with just two different tasks. So we're preparing them for both of those things right now. Going back to this idea of hyper-relevance, andragogy, making sure that we're reaching students' sense of relevance, that's what I mean by personalized. We respond directly to what they need, what their concerns are, and help be that bridge. That's what I think we can do as educators, as the humans, the ultimate humans in the loop, if you will. I've said this before earlier, but from product to process is an important core concept to think about, which is, and you'll see this when you audit your classes, just, you can export a module as a content file, as a zip file, upload it to ChatGPT, because ChatGPT does read zip files, and say, please complete the questions in this assignment for me. And do it at an 11th grade reading level using conversational text, and have 3 spelling errors and 2 grammar errors, and make it sound like me, and here's an attachment of my writing. It's disturbing, but students will get much more clever at how to fake assignments. We want them to see, okay, well, there's also an opportunity to go deeper. And that's going to be connected with process, with iterative processes that have students reflecting on their own growth the whole way through. And yeah, it's a lot. Doing portfolio assessment is different kind of grading because they submit more work. They submit more drafts. Even our LMSs are not set up yet to support a first draft and a second draft and a third draft within the same discrete assignment. But that doesn't mean we can't set up learning to support the full scope of the process. And that's something I'm going to just send out to you all to think, okay, well, how can you support process? How can you assess process? How can you have students self-assess their process? Even if the LMSs or the ed tech tools that we have aren't explicitly designed for self-assessment or peer assessment or growth-minded thinking or metacognitive practice. We can always take an existing assignment and say, here's an addendum for process, and here's an addendum for reflection at the end of the existing assignment. And I want you to be trying this as we're talking. Go into ChatGPT, for those of you who are on your computers right now, take an existing assignment. It might make you cringe or squeam a little bit, but pretend that you're that student who just is going to lean on AI to do the assignment and find out, okay, well, what could they do? And then ask the same question, okay, well, how could students do the same assignment using AI as a learning assist? Which is a weird concept. How could they dig deeper instead of being more shallow in their inquiry? So that there's still learning friction, there's still cognitive processes that I can see as the instructor of record. These are the kind of conversations we can use AI to think about. And you can even upload your current ed tech stack and say, well, we have these 5 tools in my college. How can those tools help me? You don't even have to know how to use those tools. It's bizarre, but we've created at my college, little bots, custom bots, where we have the full ed tech stack in, and someone can come in and say, hey, my students aren't doing the readings. And the first question that bot will ask is, are you a student, teacher, or learner? Because I coded it to do that with a question saying, when first user arrives, use this quote. Then respond by doing this, that, and the other. I have sort of if-then statements in my little bot. So the faculty of record coming through that experience can learn, okay, well, what are the specific problems with them not doing the readings? Are they doing the readings, but you don't see evidence of their reading? Or are they really not touching the readings? Here are 4 tools that we have right now. We have perusal or hypothesis that helps students do social annotation and take digital marginalia, which is notes in the margin of our texts. Socially, that has a sort of a social media experience, so they can upvote each other's and they can respond to each other's. And it's using informal language as opposed to formal language, unless you want it to be formal. You may have other tools down the road that are different, but again, looking at our tool, it pops up, okay, here's these 4 tools we've got. You could do the same thing without a fancy bot and just say, hey, I know that our college has, and Cheryl, what are some examples of ed tech tools you have at the college? So Grammarly is one. And when you do plug it in, make sure to put, Packback is one of my favorite tools. And Packback allows for student-driven inquiry. The students get to lead the inquiry. So you could start off with Packback and say, well, our Packback license includes these specific tools. How can I use that to reshape this assignment to make it less susceptible to AI misuse and more likely that students can positively and ethically use AI to accelerate their writing process to make them more effective so that they can do it without the scaffolding of AI or with the scaffolding of AI. As a writing instructor, this is disturbing for me because I used to think, okay, well, writing is thinking, Donald Murray style. And I love writing. And the word essay means to try, and I want students to try to do that thinking process. Increasingly, students will need to be able to do writing with AI or without AI and to be able to demonstrate both. What does that look like in the future? Again, going back to the query, you can set up a process right now as you're on your phones and say, well, I'm going to put in Packback and say, well, how could I reshape this assignment using Packback in a way that might help students be more independent in their inquiry and still have deeper question-making processes or better writing processes, et cetera. Consider using the tools you've got. Let's see, how are we doing on the time right now?
We've got
Wonderful.
15 minutes still.
We may not dig into as much of the sort of products, but the main thing that I need to get into is the questions. So authentic, what does that even mean? To students, it means, is it real? And sometimes they come into a classroom and it feels like, okay, this is the same textbook I've been using for 20 years, the same activities that my older brother had, and it's all listed at Course Hero. I can just go find the samples that have been uploaded and fake my way using Course Hero. I don't know if you know about Course Hero, but there's tools like that on the market in which if you Google your own class, you'll see examples of quizzes and essays and papers that students have uploaded. And I promise you, you'll see that here. If it feels stale, they're going to go in and see that it's stale. It's the same exact assignment that's been used. You need to refresh your own work regularly. And if we're not doing that, it's not going to work, unfortunately. So AI is a tool that can help us quickly reshape what we're doing, breathe in some new life, and then throw in some ed tech that says, okay, how is this going to be relevant to our students who are pursuing this specific career or who are concerned about this specific community need in our neighborhood right now? Whatever your core beliefs about teaching or learning, think about using AI to connect with your core beliefs and begin with those beliefs and say, hey, I believe in student-centered teaching. I believe in Vygotsky and zones of proximal development and cognitive, in minimizing cognitive offloading. Whatever your core beliefs are about teaching, if you're a constructivist, begin with that and say, hey, I'm a constructivist. And then say, how can I reshape this to reflect my core beliefs about teaching and learning? You can have your beliefs, whatever they are, but think about using AI to save you time in refreshing this content and keeping it real for your students so that their outcome is, oh, I did something that didn't just meet the outcomes, but is actually relevant for my life, for the things that I care about in that first exit ticket that I did at the start of the year where I said, this is who I am, this is what I care about, this is what I love. You're reading those, hopefully, and you might be using AI to summarize those. You're finding out what your students care about. And then you might be taking that summary and saying, okay, well, please take these core ideas and reshape this curriculum for this year relating to these kinds of common things that my students care about. Now, because we can do it without spending 30 hours creating curriculum, we can just use AI to quickly reshape what we already have and make it more active, more dynamic, more relevant, etc. Next core phrase is just passive engagement with AI. Students are using it. They're using it when they're bored. There's a lot of studies that show all the different ways that students use it. And recently, Claude and ChatGPT came out with giant data sets that showed how students are using both of their products right now. Everything is evolving quickly. ChatGPT is now integrating with Canvas and Spotify as of last week. It probably will be, it's integrating with Coursera as well, I believe. And it's going to keep adding its integrations for apps. It will probably try to be, as the folks at the Hard Fork podcast said in one of their podcasts a few weeks ago, it'll try to be a new homepage. It'll be competing with generative search that happens through other tools. And they're going to keep using these tools. Are we going to have a finger on the pulse of that use? This is the weird thing. Even if we don't love AI, we want to have a finger in the pulse. How do we get them to talk about how they're using these tools? Do we have ways that recognize that, okay, this may be, and again, I've said this before, AI may be kind of like the automobile going around the corner in Cincinnati, and I'm in my horse and buggy being like, oh my goodness, this is not good. It's going to cause pollution, which it will. It's going to get into car crashes, which it will. And some student of automobiles is going to have to say, okay, well, let's develop a system for the first stoplights in Cincinnati where we can actually have guardrails for these tools, because a lot of these companies are not going to build these guardrails themselves. And our students are going to need to find the ways to guide this forward, whatever this happens to be. So this is actively engaging students in analyzing AI. And if you have them using AI or encouraging them to, give them an opt-out so they don't have to, if they have ethical concerns about it. But if they do, within the process, have them compare multiple AIs and say, what are the concerns that you have? What is the most effective and why? Where they're still doing the cognitive work, analyzing the outputs of the results of these tools. Weird concept, but we can do that increasingly. And I mentioned this earlier, but what's it called? LM Arena is a website you can go to test and compare the outputs of two different random cutting-edge LLMs at the same time and see what the results are. Or they can do it manually, but there's just a lot of tools that will help students really think about, okay, well, what is working, what's not, when does this fail for which use case, and when does it not? Students going into medicine who are looking at, okay, well, even from this college, we had a faculty member last year who said, I could get AI to give the wrong dose of epinephrine that will kill one of my students. Perverse project, perhaps, but you could ask your students, okay, I want you to play with AI and show me how it can fail. And I want you to play with it and push it until it does. And then they become aware of what it can do and what it can't do. Because otherwise, they're going to be leaning on these tools in the courtroom, in the medical office, here and there, all over the place, and not necessarily know, okay, is this astonishingly right or astonishingly wrong? Because it will be both. Moving forward to the next slide, ethical issues are a thing that is worth considering in your classes. I'm going to reshare the screen so that we've got audio. But as a thought about what do we do about ethics, regardless of what your beliefs are about AI, it's a space to have genuine debate around the future of AI. I did a talk for AAC&U where I talked about 25 real ethical issues that are worth holding on to as we take the next steps with AI. I'm going to share the screen again with audio, which is unfortunately part of the process in Zoom. I clicked on share sound. I'm going right back in, and I'm clicking the share screen now. And I'm going to open Spotify, or am I open Rolling Stone? I'm going to open Spotify. Hang on for a moment. I will zoom out. As a silent plug as well, I have a podcast of a podcast playlist of all the podcasts I've listened to since ChatGPT 3.5 started. If you want to check that out, from the beginning of like all the controversy. It's interesting if you like to listen to stuff as you exercise or cook. I'm going to play for this for a minute, but just imagine this 2-minute clip in your classroom and then having students talk face-to-face or online about ethical questions connected with AI as it might relate to, where does the data come from? What about copyright? What about whose knowledge it is? What about whose tradition it is? What about recreating with other people's ideas? What does that mean? Really fascinating question. So here's a quick clip. We'll listen to it for about a minute and I'll just jump forward. So here we go. I'm going to set this at 1 minute and 14 seconds, just a short clip.
Oh, my heart used to be.
So you can hear someone singing there. I'm going to rewind it a little bit further just so you get the short introduction. But this is, to me, a hauntingly pretty song that I would listen to if I had it on Spotify. That is not created by a human being.
Weekend song from last year weren't anything like that. That song was entirely written and produced and sung by a human, with AI voice morphing added at the end. But generative AI is moving at astonishing speed. And this year, I became aware of a service named Suno that's succeeded in making a ChatGPT or Midjourney for music. Their latest model, V3, which just became available to the general public, is capable of some truly astonishing and unnerving results.
In this long, the bold, empty, bleak. I'm just a soul trapped in this circuitry. Oh, my heart used to beat, but now it's cold and weak. Oh, the pain inside me.
The song we included with the story we published was called Soul of the Machine, and it was generated entirely, including the title, from the prompt Solo Acoustic Mississippi Delta Blues about a sad AI.
That's a very short prompt for a powerfully compelling song. And if you have students doing the research or listening to this podcast, they will hear Vernon Reid say, that's not cool, as the guitarist who says, look, you can't just use an African-American idiom that's deeply tied to historical human trauma and enslavement just to show how cool AI is. Complicated times, but this is an opportunity, regardless of your beliefs about AI, to engage in these questions with your students, to make them what's driving this forward. Continuing on, this kind of stuff, I mentioned the different ethical issues. I have a piece that maps out all of the ethical issues that I could find, like, I don't know, in April. It's a lot, and there's more. I did the similar talk for ACNU, and I added 12 more to the list of ethical considerations. That's not going away. I still feel like that's all the more reason why we need to be engaging our students in AI and understanding the tool in order to be able to critique it. Because yesterday's critiques don't hold up today. The technology is moving too quickly. Our students need to be on top of things so that they understand, okay, well, what is this technology? How is it going to impact me and my communities and my futures? And they cannot engage with that if they don't understand it on a firsthand level. I think the same thing goes for you as educators. So I mentioned social annotation, I mentioned video. Those are things to think about. I want to close with some other slides that I think are very quickly relevant. Number one is, again, on the far left, we see Microsoft making AI mandatory for their employees. A number of companies are doing that. What does that mean for our students when they start a job where they have to use AI? Second one is no AI, no job, an article from the Washington Post. The third one on the right is some employees are pretending to use AI just to make their employers happy. Weird times. Then we have employees are using AI but keeping it quiet for specific reasons. It's bizarre. There's many folks that are requiring mandatory AI, some that are pretending to use AI. I think those slides are already in. There's a study that somebody mentioned, I think it was Edward Watson at AAC&U, about how students feel like they don't feel prepared for the workforce because their college didn't teach them enough about AI when they started. Do we want that for our students? Do we want them to say that they left college without being ready for the world they're stepping into? AI is now part of that equation, which means maybe rethinking our course learning outcomes. Maybe, just like in the time of Plato, when Plato was bemoaning the new technology that was going to be the end of memory and the end of oration and public speaking, it's like, why do we have to write things down? pen and paper was kind of a terrifying technology. AI arguably is the same and has lots of ethical questions that are connected with it. I would argue that maybe we need to move back to oration, where students know how to do public speaking, because that shows their humanness. And employers are going to say, well, what can you do with or without AI that an AI alone cannot do? That's an essential question to hold on to, if nothing else. You have a broad series of technologies. This is not your tech stack, but it's somebody else. You can search for what technology are available to play with. I would start with I'm going to unshare the screen for a moment, because I think we're kind of getting short on time. But you can start with Packback and think to yourself, okay, well, here's an assignment that I've got. How can I rewrite this with any of those 7 questions that I shared with you to make it less passive and more active, to make it more connected and less disconnected, and put that into your prompt and say, okay, here's the full experience. You can cut and paste the reading and say, I need to rethink how I'm teaching this so that I don't lose what I love about teaching, but it allows students positive ways to use AI and minimizes the likelihood of them misusing AI for learning. I think we're at our time, folks, but let's close up with some final questions from the room. This was an edgy talk. I hope it made you think. And if anything else, I hope you go in, audit your classes, see what's there. And remember this as well. The current technologies that exist in the market are flawed in terms of AI detection. Even if we think that we know when AI is happening, we don't know for sure, so we lean on existing tools in the market. And a few months ago, I was on a panel at ASU GSV. I was moderating a panel with the chief of product for Turnitin and the CEO of GPT-0. And I asked them tough questions about, okay, well, what do we do about the problem of AI hallucination within AI detection? Or you might say false positives. Actually, that's the phrase that I used. What do we do about the fact from the Stanford study that AI sometimes signals against non-native English speakers? So the detection tools themselves are biased and they have false positives. What do we do? These tools will get better, but they're not foolproof, and it changes our culture from teaching to becoming policemen of learning. So I want to come back to what can we do curricularly so that we can preempt that problem as much as possible. So I want to go look in the chat feed. Questions from the room that are emerging, thoughts. Harmonize is great for assessments. Thank you for somebody who said Harmonize in the chat feed. Harmonize is a wonderful tool, and the founder is a wonderful guy who just will take feedback from you and use it to continue to iterate his product. So Harmonize is a product you can lean into. I'm glad to hear that in the chat feed. Questions or thoughts from this from the room? We only got a couple of minutes. Could be in the room or could be in the Zoom. So the whole team is responsive to instructor feedback. That's right. I'm forgetting the CEO's name right now, which embarrasses me. But the whole team, everybody on the team is actually really quite helpful. Marcus, yes. Last name starts with a P. I think it's P-O-P-E-T-Z. Wonderful guy. All of these products are evolving as quickly as they can to match the evolution of technology. So that's another thing to think about in terms of, okay, well, what does this tech have today? 6 months from now, it may have a different series of tools available. So keep asking the same question. Say, we have currently Packback and Harmonize, and we have Microsoft Copilot built in the back end, and I have access to Notebook LM. Should I create a video introducing this module so they can listen to it, or audio introducing this module? The audio tool, you can create a podcast for anything that they're reading really quite easily using something called Notebook LM. A lot of teachers are doing that. Whatever you're using, whatever the college is using, plug it into AI and then plug in your core beliefs about teaching and learning and a specific assignment and those course learning outcomes if possible, and say, I want to do something that's clearly aligned with the course learning outcome or the module learning outcomes that uses this tool that makes this experience more interactive. And you're not going to agree with the first output. You could say, no, this is not scoped right. This is going to take 20 hours, and all we have is 8 hours for this. So then you push back against it just the way you want your students to do until you get it to something that is a workable first draft. You don't need to have it create your final product, but it helps you quickly prototype the possible. So looking at questions, I don't think we have a lot of questions coming in from the room, but I hope this is useful for you as you pull back and think, okay, well, what can I do in my class to make sure that students, number one, know that my class is still relevant in a time of AI, that knows that I'm human and that I'm bringing something that AI does not. Those are things to hold on to. And again, I thank you for your time and for coming to this session. And please stay in touch. I want to go back to my slides just for one last piece that I want to do as a closing image. Let me see if do I still have my slide shared in the Zoom? I do not. So I'm going to share my slide in the Zoom.
Right now.
Hang on for 2 seconds. I want feedback from you. I want to know, okay, what was useful, what was not, what felt like a valuable piece, and what felt like, okay, this is not as valuable. So this is my QR code for my Google form. I will also put it into the chat feed. So let me click on this really quickly. I'm going to click on copy link. And if you have questions, this is me on LinkedIn. Don't be a stranger. Connect with me or send me a message or email me. My email address is reeddicksonux@gmail.com. I don't use social media much, but I have social media channels. If you prefer using social media, you can message me in one of those spaces, and hopefully I will get it. But I just don't look at those very much. But email is always fine. LinkedIn is my favorite way to reach me, and you can always just message me there and say, hey, this is an opportunity or this is a challenge. What do you think? And I'm here for you. So thank you all again, and we'll see you all online.